They say first impressions count. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. When we look at our passage, Zechariah doesn't make a very good first impression on the angel. Surely somebody of his stature and his standing and his experience would make a better hash of it. Perhaps the angel should have expected more from this righteous priest who was in the sanctuary praying to God, crying out to God for God to step in. So when God steps in, perhaps the angel should be expecting a little bit more. In verse 19, we actually get to discover a little bit more. And we actually get to discover the angel's identity. And the angel identifies himself as, I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God, and I've been sent to you with this message of good news. So we get introduced to the angel. And what we learn is that Gabriel, which literally means man of God, is clearly a messenger from God. Gabriel has a very specific role within God's plans. And we've come across Gabriel before. If you think back to the book of Daniel, and in the book of Daniel has these incredible visions where God downloads to him pictures of the future and gives him a very clear sense of something prophetic for the end of time. And in Daniel chapter 8, where Daniel is puzzling over the vision, we see that Gabriel is told to go and explain it to him. And then in chapter 9, Daniel has another vision to unpack some more of what's going to happen at the end times. And once again, Gabriel comes to see him and Daniel recognises him. So clearly, Daniel's met Gabriel. He recognises Gabriel and there's a sense of the personality of Gabriel coming through. And what we see is that Gabriel's role is to explain God's plans and purposes for humanity. He has a very specific role. And this role seems to be to announce and to help develop Jesus coming, both for the first time and for the second time. So what we know is that when Gabriel appears, then this is something which is a big deal. And it's something which Zechariah, who would know his Bible, would know about. He would know about Gabriel from his own readings of Daniel. So when he's read about Daniel and suddenly he's in front of an angel who identifies himself as Gabriel, this is maybe why it's a bit mind-blowing that suddenly Zechariah's going, what, you mean me and my family? We're going to be part of God's story? The second thing we learn about Gabriel is that he stands in the presence of God. So not only is he the messenger of God, he stands in the presence of God. Now, just allow that to soak in for a moment. Gabriel stands in the presence of God. What must that be like? What we know is quite simply, it's a privileged position. He has access to the inner courts of God. He stands in the very presence of God. This is not insignificant. This is a major thing. He has a really important place because where he is, he gets to hear the voice of God. So as the messenger of God who stands in the presence of God, in the very privileged position of being with God, he gets to hear the voice of God and carry the very message of God from the throne room for us as human beings to know and understand the heart of God. This gives him not only a privileged position, but a privileged purpose. He gets to share the heart of God to prepare God's people for what's to come. The third thing we see is that the message that he brings is good news. He says, it was God who sent me to bring you this good news. Good news literally means the gospel. So he's bringing the gospel to Zechariah. The gospel is good news. And what he's saying is that Jesus is coming. because you're going to have the forerunner Zechariah, who's going to make it possible for the Saviour of the world to step in to the world to achieve God's plans for all of humanity. In other words, the time has come, the clock is ticking, that taper begins to run across the screen as we go, the mission is underway. There's an urgency, there's an impact, there's a reality. And guess what? He's going to visit Mary soon. What an awesome experience. How amazing would it be to have a conversation with an angel? We know from what we've looked at before that angels are ministering spirits that are sent to help the people of God. But what we see with Gabriel is it shows us something of God's heart. It shows us that God's heart is that he wants to communicate with us. He wants us to understand his plans. He wants us to understand what's going to come. God doesn't want us to be ignorant. He doesn't want us to go around blindly, but rather he wants us to understand what his heart is and what his purposes are. And that means we have a choice. We have a choice to listen and respond or to ignore. Gabriel tells us that Jesus is coming. He tells Zechariah that Jesus is coming by the very fact that he's going to have this Elijah character who's going to make it possible. He tells Mary that Jesus is coming. We learn that Jesus is coming, but Gabriel has also told us Jesus is coming back again. And I wonder whether our response is going to be like Zechariah, that goes, for all of our heritage, for all of our understanding as Christians, do we go, yeah, I'm not sure about that? Or do we respond like Mary, that goes, whatever you say, may it be just as you say?